Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Meaningful People podcast. This podcast is sponsored by our friends at Alpert & Associates. Do you need life insurance? Do you need financial planning? The answer to both of those things are yes, because you're a human being. And if you're a human being, and a responsible one that is, you need to have your finances in check. You don't want to look at your bank account one day and be like, oh my gosh, what happened? I couldn't afford that, I guess. And now what? Now what? And married people out there, if you have children, life insurance, it is a must. So that's why you need to go ahead and reach out to Moshe Alpert. You can send them an email right now at alpertmoshe@gmail.com. That's alpertmoshe@gmail.com. You get a free consultation. You have nothing to lose. And of course, our friends at Collars & Co. Many of you around the world have ordered these shirts already, and you absolutely love them. The firm collar and the soft shirt. Say it with me, the firm collar and the soft shirt. That is Collars & Co. They come in short sleeves, in long sleeves, full button down, half button down. They are changing the shirt game in this world. You need to be a part of the revolution. In order to do that, you're going to go to collarsandco.com and you use promo code MEANINGFUL for 15% off your order. That's MEANINGFUL for 15% off your order. Head there today. And I guarantee you're going to get the shirt. I have many friends who have already ordered it and many of you who have ordered it. And every single one of them have told me, Nachi, I love it. I love it. I get to wear a nice, beautiful, professional looking shirt, but I feel like I'm about to go play ball. It feels amazing. So head to collarsandco.com. Use promo code MEANINGFUL for 15% off your order. Okay, so this episode we sat down with Rabbi Chaim Miller, who is so well known in many circles. The Gutnick Chumash, the Practical Tanya, the one of the most famous biographies of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Chaim is a prolific writer and an amazing personality, and his personality really comes out in this episode. When I was speaking to Momo about this guest, Momo was so excited. He's like, "This is the modern day Rabbi Akiva." He mamish became from it at a later age, and he just dove into Torah. So I'm really excited for you to check out this episode with Rabbi Chaim Miller. And if you're new to this podcast, please introduce yourself, leave a comment, hit the subscribe button, and we hope to see you back here again soon. And is it an episode of the Meaningful People podcast if I do not mention that this is sponsored by our amazing friend Isaac Newman, Lili Nishmas's mother, Rechama Paral Malkolea Bas Aryeh Leib. Everything in this episode, all the Torah and the inspiration derived should be a schus for your mother's neshama. Isaac, thank you so much for once again sponsoring an episode of the Meaningful People podcast. Enjoy this episode. You are listening to the Meaningful People podcast,
the podcast featuring our nation's most impactful, influential,
and meaningful people. Want to kick this one off, Momo?
PG, I could kick us off, yeah.
Take us home.
Welcome back to the Meaningful People podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming in today.
My pleasure.
Who's here today?
We're here today with Rabbi Chaim Miller, and I will share with the audience that, it's been now pretty much a year since I've been doing this, and I can say that we've had some incredible people, but I think it might be fair to say that I'm like, the emotion that I'm feeling right now about like meeting you and sitting down with you and like getting to know you a little bit is materially different from everyone else, because I learn from your sefer every single morning.
Okay.
And we have a little Tanya Chabura in North Woodmere, and we learn Practical Tanya, which you authored, the adaptation of Tanya. And I'm just super excited to sit down and get to know you a little bit.
This is the excitement.
Yeah, this is me excited.
Well, I'm also excited. I can't say I'm as excited as Momo because that's pretty excited.
All right.
But it's really a pleasure to meet you, and I'm looking forward to know more about you and learn more about you in this episode.
Thank you.
Are you excited to meet us? Because I didn't hear
super excited. Yeah, I've been watching you
for like
do your thing and like all the chilled vibe.
By the way, that's like the thing someone says when they have no idea what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're doing your thing. You're doing great.
Yeah.
Like, I love what you're doing. You keep doing your thing. But anyways, I guess take us back to the beginning of Chaim Miller's life.
That far?
Not like the first few minutes. I think we could
like formulating memories.
Yeah, formulating memories.
Whoa, that's okay.
No, take us back wherever you're comfortable. What was your upbringing like?
I grew up in England. You guys been to England?
I hear the accent. The accent's pretty solid.
It's softened a bit.
Has it?
Yeah, like British people think I'm American, and American people think I'm British.
Oh, it's the best of both worlds.
But in America, British accent, everyone's, oh, you sound so intelligent.
You're telling me that British people think that you're American?
They think I've got a bit of a twang. You know.
It is true, though, that
Yeah.
Americans, when they hear a British accent,
Yeah.
everything automatically becomes like elevated.
Yeah.
Like intellectual.
Sophisticated. Yeah.
Yeah, I should lay it on thicker.
Can you give me like a sentence that is not a meaningful sentence, but just like say the Laffy Taffy is yellow. Like
The Laffy Taffy is yellow?
sounds so smart. Sounds so smart, right? But yeah, so you grew up in England. That's cool.
Yes.
How was that?
I was went to fine British schools, and I was actually in high school with Sacha Baron Cohen.
Oh,
He throws
If you
that
want
in.
him on your next,
yeah. I don't know about that. I don't think so. Right?
that's not suitable,
He's a
right?
Haley Gayed.
Yeah.
He has a lot of nitzitzes to be made.
Very good. That was very nice of you.
Yeah, some people are impressed by that. Others are like, oh,
What type of high school is that?
like a very fancy British
Prep.
Christian. Yeah,
Christian?
Yeah. Well, in England, you don't have separation of church and state, so everything's like and also Jews. There's not as many Jews in America, so you feel like you're part of a Christian country, basically.
Wow.
But the Jew we had off for like the religious assemblies. We would have our own Jewish thing.
All right, cool.
Yeah. But yeah, it was pretty happy upbringing. I enjoyed it. Good schooling, but Jewish-wise, confused
Yeah.
because you don't really have it here. But like when I grew up, like 70% of Jews were Orthodox in England. Doesn't mean they're observant, but we identified as Orthodox. So your shul was Orthodox. If you did something, it would be kahalacha. But like of those 70%, like only a handful are actually like Shomer Shabbos, Kashrus, and
Right.
everything. And they're all different shades. So, you know, really, it exists a bit in America, but not so much. Like social orthodoxy, I call it.
Social Orthodox.
Yeah.
So I guess the upbringing you would define as like a good Heimische from Jewish upbringing, or not so much?
No, pretty secular,
Mm-hmm.
but strongly traditional. Strong Jewish identity. Like we had a Seder, like certain things we did.
Yeah.
The successful, like some Yom Tov was successful, like Pesach,
Yeah.
like a Shavuos, not so much. You know?
Right.
Never really made it out there.
Shavuos' agent is still working on
Shavuos is
some
like
PR.
a good.
Yeah.
You guys, I mean, you did it wrong then. Like Shavuos is good stuff.
It really is.
Shavuos ranks
yeah,
well.
I've since done Shavuos. So.
Yeah. That's good.
Uh,
When do you think you started doing Shavuos?
more recently, like when I became more, like when I was 20, I had basically a spiritual awakening.
20 years old.
Yeah.
Take us
at
through that.
Oxford
Yeah.
then?
No, I was in Leeds. Everyone thinks I was in Oxford, by the way, and it's a myth.
It's a myth.
Yeah, I don't normally like come out against it because it sounds cool, but you mentioned it, so
You weren't in
yeah.
Oxford. You weren't
I've been in Oxford.
So that's
but
I've been to
I had-
Harvard also.
yeah. No, I studied in Leeds University.
And what you?
I wanted to be a doctor.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
You-
Because my father's a pharmacist. I just thought I'll do one better. Yeah. Be a doctor. I didn't want anything to do with money. I couldn't stand the idea of it being in business. I just want to do a job and get paid for it.
It's so funny because our last
Yeah.
guest was like all about money,
Mm.
and this is
Not about
making
accumulating
money,
his
but
own
saving
wealth,
money.
just helping people
You don't-
manage their
you
finances.
don't like money, or
It never motivated me, and I felt weird because of that. Because most people it does motivate.
It's a great soundbite.
And
It's amazing.
and I didn't want to be managing money, so I thought I'll be a doctor. I'll get paid. Not much in England. It's socialist
Yeah.
medicine, but I had a kind of my formative moment, if you want to know what it was, is sitting in synagogue, and I'm pulling out a Chumash, and this is the Hertz Chumash. You ever seen the Hertz Chumash? The
Hertz.
chief rabbi of England in the 1930s was Rabbi Hertz. He was actually American. They brought him in. And he wrote, in 1936, he published the Hertz Chumash, which is very intellectual, very academic, kind of contrasting with Christian Bible commentaries to show that, you know, the Jews are also intelligent, but very antiquated, the English. So it was all the thous and the these. So I'm sitting in shul, and I'm trying to connect with it. We weren't, there were more observant members of the congregation. We were like in the lower echelon. So I already felt like not a sense of belonging. And I didn't actually realize people were faking it. I thought they were all authentic and we were just faking it. So that was a bit alienating. Because like in England, there's no conservative. Because when Jews came to America, they're like, oh, Orthodoxy is too much. Let's make like something that's traditional. Reform is too.
So England is just.
Yeah. Let's just make something that's like a kind of, more our level. But the British are like, hey, we could just fake. We don't have to make a new denomination. We'll just fake being Orthodox. It's fine.
So what was that moment for you?
So that moment, I'm sitting there. Okay, so I could read Hebrew. I didn't understand Hebrew. I could read English, and I thought I could understand English. But I'm reading this Chumash, and it's like, I can't understand it. Let me read it again. And it's just like, I can't read I'm like alienated from my own tradition. That's what I felt.
And then you wanted to dig deeper?
Not at the time, no. I just felt like...
So I'm curious why you consider that a formative moment for you.
Because humans, we run on stories. That's how humans work. And so it opened up like something that needed closure. Like, I'm Jewish.
It's like the Ayeka of Rabbi Nachman.
Right, exactly. I'm Jewish. That means a lot. It's a significant part of my identity. But I don't know what that means because I can't even read like the basic book. Rabbi's sermons were awful. In those days, this is the 80s. So they still used to rebuke the congregation. Can you imagine doing that nowadays? Yom Kippur, they'd be like, how comes we only see you once a year? And blah, blah, blah. What's going to happen with Anglo Jewry? And like, it was all this kind of harsh stuff. So I didn't connect with that either. And then nothing really, my bar mitzvah, we weren't like the hot members of the synagogue. So the rabbi decided to take his vacation that week. So then like he got sick or something. So something happened. He couldn't,
right.
So he wasn't that happy he was even there. And his speech was like, if you don't come back next week, this is all a waste of time. And he just kept saying it. If you don't come back next week, if you don't come back next week. And then the next week I was in bed and I was tired. And I think, should I go back? I was like, no, you know what? I don't want to go back.
You don't want to go to synagogue?
So I just went back to sleep
Yeah.
for like the next 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I was in college and the Gulf War started. And that night when they were bombing Israel, everyone's like, we've got to stay up and everyone's going to put on tefillin. Just like, okay, I guess. Why not?
Were you putting on tefillin at that point?
No, I had to pass your bar mitzvah exam, you had to like show you could put on tefillin. I had a pair of tefillin I never put on. Passed that. And I was like, okay, why not? And that was kind of stirring. I mean, looking back, it was stirring. And then nothing really happened after that for a while. And then I was looking for meaning. Like, what's the meaning of life? Everyone's like either doing drugs or looking for the meaning of life in college. That's what was happening. I mean, or both, maybe.
Yeah.
And the dealer actually lived in our building. So there were these lines of people.
Oh, man.
Lining up. And he had a poster on the door which said, there is no meaning. Something like that. So I didn't really go for that. I was
erroneous.
I was about to say, you would have seen that sign. It would have been like, erroneous.
What is that?
No meaning. Erroneous.
So I started going to philosophy lectures, trying to find meaning. And then Rabbi David Gottlieb from Osamech came to our campus and gave a lecture. Actually came to I was in Leeds. He came to Manchester. We went there. And his lecture was, I will prove that, you know who he is?
Yeah. Or
he's a genius. He's still alive. He teaches.
Yeah. You know,
I've heard of him. I'm not familiar with
He
his
was
work.
a professor of logic in Johns Hopkins University. And then
professor of logic.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine how smart he is?
Yeah.
And the Boston Rebbe, the late Boston Rebbe was makar of him and a lot of other intellectuals, and he became a Boston Chassid. And he gave this speech that I will prove the Torah is true, which to me sounded weird.
How old were you then?
19.
So you're like, I'm like, prove me right. Prove it to me.
No, it was like, for me, Torah was just a social club. There was no meaning in Judaism, no intellectual ideas. All the books were unreadable.
Yeah.
So to me, it sounded like I will prove a Kiddush is true.
Yeah.
A Kiddush is not true or false. A Torah is not true or false. It's just what you have your bar mitzvah with. Like, I didn't get it.
It's okay. That's so interesting.
That's how far I was. And then that blew me away. It's like, whoa, there's this intelligent Judaism. Whoa, there's ideas and like Rambam. It's just like, I never heard any of this stuff before. And I thought I'd done my 10,000 hours of Judaism. Like, I checked it out. I was sure there's nothing there. It's just, I'll marry a Jew and we'll do our Seder, but that's it. There's no... And I was like, whoa, there's all this stuff. And then he gave another one called Mysticism, Meaning, and Mitzvah. I was like, mysticism? Whoa, that's in Jude. I didn't even know what that was even in English, but it was like something cool. So that really got me going.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
It's like, so you're 19, you're 20 years old, and that, I guess, made you want to follow a more observant path, or?
Not yet. I never really wanted to be observant. It just kind of happened as I was.
Do you want to be observant now?
Yeah, I like it now. I like
good.
it.
That's good.
Yeah.
Check.
But he was a visiting lecturer.
Yeah.
Right? He wasn't...
No.
You weren't able to connect with him there and engage with him there.
I did. I had like a one-on-one for...
What was your takeaway?
I was like, I'm trying to find meaning, God, what do you recommend? And he said, keep a diary of coincidences, which I still have. I have this diary.
Wow.
Are you going to publish it?
No.
That'd be cool, huh? Publishing
It's a bit
diary.
raw, yeah.
A little personal, probably.
Keep a journal of coincidences.
Yeah, and then he said, you'll feel Ashkacha Pratis. You'll feel God's presence, even though you're like in this dark place. And it really helped me.
Wow.
Yeah. So then I found the Rambam's Zmor Nevuchim. They were selling in the library.
You were an intellectual, it sounds like.
I'm not. I love ideas. I'm not really. I couldn't be an academic. I'm not.
Really? Because I see what I'm hearing is like you are super. You're a total academic. No?
No.
I'm not reading you right.
Yeah.
Mendel, academic or no? Sometimes.
I don't like the detachment of academia. I want to be like connected.
Practical Tanya.
Yeah. And also obsessing over detail. Like the Practical Tanya, for example. I want to make it alive and useful to people's lives, because one of the reasons I wrote that book is because I first learned Tanya when I was 20, 21, and I loved it. And then in Chabad, there's this thing, you read it every year. So can you imagine you read the same book every year? You get sick of it, basically.
Yeah.
And after 10, 15 years, like, I don't even want to read this anymore. And I felt sad because it had been so inspiring to me. So that's why I thought, I'm going to translate it and adapt it fresh. So like, I'll connect to it again the same way I did before.
Before reinvigorating experience with Tanya, I'd love to hear your first encounter
Okay,
with
yeah.
Tanya.
Let's backtrack a bit. So, I took philosophy lectures in the college because I was trying to find meaning, and medicine wasn't doing it for me. I was becoming disillusioned with, it felt like being a car mechanic. Western medicine, it wasn't holistic. It didn't feel like healing. It just felt like very...
Car mechanic, like a body shop
Yeah.
for the body.
Which, obviously it has amazing
In a
values.
body shop.
Yeah. I go to doctors, but I became disillusioned with it to some extent. And I was getting really into meaning. And I went to philosophy lectures and they were doing Plato and Aristotle and all this stuff. And I was like, okay, interesting, but it doesn't really speak to me. So I'll go buy a book. So I went to the bookstore. Remember, there's no internet in those days. You had to buy a book and read it.
You're not that old, but you're dating yourself in this episode so far.
Oh, okay. Well,
The Gulf War.
Couldn't even buy a book on Amazon back then.
Yeah.
Well, just
No internet. Okay.
no, yeah. Well, it probably existed, but
What was the
Yeah.
walk to the library like? Like parents say, what we used to do to get to school? We used to walk over bridges in snow. But you had a car though, maybe.
My father's from LA. He never told me stories about walking in snow to school.
I don't know.
yeah. So I was seeking. So I went to the bookstore and they had a book by Maimonides, the Rambam. And I was like, whoa, there's a rabbi wrote a book. And they're selling it in the philosophy. Philosophy was like, Kodesh HaKadoshim of secular studies. It's like the most elevated, the most sophisticated. They're selling a rabbi's book there. It's like, I got to check this out. So I bought it. And it was the old translation, by the way. There's since been a new. I mean, even then there was a newer translation I didn't know about. So it's like, you barely understand it. But I still have it. I wrote marginal notes and like, this is interesting. And it got me into like, I've got to check this out. There's something I've not discovered in Judaism. And then... so I had a friend in college. I was like, I want to go to yeshiva. Let's go to Rabbi Gottlieb. and learn from him because he's amazing. And my friend, his name's Elisha, if he's watching, but hi. And so he's like, yeah, let's go. He'd been inspired. He did the March of the Living at Auschwitz. So and he liked Rabbi Gottlieb. And, but we didn't end up going because his parents were like into Chabad. And so he's like, my parents want you to meet their Chabad rabbi, and talk about you going to yeshiva. So I was like, okay. So we turn up at this place. And I'm not going to mention his name for a reason. You'll see why. So we turn up at this place. And something really impressed me about this rabbi. That it was late at night. And they just had this big party for Brengen thing. And it was a big mess. And as we're finishing Ma'ariv, he starts cleaning up the garbage himself. I was like, whoa, this guy's dedicated. There's something impressive. I don't know what he's on, but like the rabbi's cleaning up the garbage, that's amazing. Anyway, it just struck me very strongly. And just to kind of fast forward a bit, I spoke at his Chabad house about 5 years ago. They invited me to come speak. Oh, wow. And I told this story in public, how he inspired me by picking up the garbage. And he was really offended. He's like, oh, I thought it was some of the ideas I shared with you. You told all my people that was the only inspiring thing about me is I cleared up the garbage. Anyway, but it did. It was like, there's a certain dedication here. This guy's like,
I think it's also worthy to highlight. A lot of times we encounter personalities in our life, and yes, they have a very inspiring message, and yes, the content of what they're sharing is substantively inspiring.
Yes.
But we're inspired by people.
Yes.
And there was a way that he was conducting his life.
Yes.
That touched you.
Exactly. It was that kind of, he's totally into us. This is like, he's totally engrossed in whatever he's doing to the extent and that was very powerful. And then, so we met him and he said, well, you should go to this Chabad program. I was like, okay, I never really heard of any of this stuff. So we went out and I told my friend, like, I don't know, I like Rabbi Gottlieb. I don't want to go to this, I want to go to my program. So we were just in the waiting room. There was a little bookstore there. And I was like, hold on. Rabbi Gottlieb's book was there. So I picked it up and was like, well, his lectures are here. This is amazing. Okay, so we'll go to this Chabad thing. I've got Rabbi Gottlieb in a book. And I wrote it in my coincidence diary.
Nice.
But I'm not in contact with him. I should really get in contact with him. But I have a very fond attachment to him and his teachings. So then this was a summer program in the Catskills.
You mentioned your son mentioned Ben Shapiro. Our conversation with Ben Shapiro. I get a lot of feedback that I challenged him to do something. I'm asking you, are you open to a challenge?
Okay.
Yeah?
Partially open.
So you shared how large of a role Rabbi Gottlieb's impact on you has been.
Yes.
And then like you lamented for a second that you're not in touch with him.
Yeah.
I challenge you to reach out to him.
Okay, I'm going to do that.
Right now.
Yeah, I was already thinking of that.
Nice.
As I was saying it, I should really do this.
You should really call him, yeah. Maybe he'll listen.
I've never really spoken about it public before. It doesn't feel public, but I know this is public.
We're just sitting around here schmoozing.
I will do that. That's a great challenge. Thank you.
Sure.
We should really follow up with Ben.
Ben,
how you doing?
What was his challenge?
So he had shared that he had certain intellectual objections to davening and how it feels like you're just appealing to like God in the sky and trying to get something that you don't deserve. And he just articulated some intellectual objections to just the whole...
Like it's a gumball machine. Like Hashem is just fulfilling orders. So,
and I shared with him that a lot of times, I think the idea is shared from Rav Tzadok, from Lublin, that if you want to know where God has some expectations for you, pay attention to where there's some resistance. And if you're feeling that resistance, maybe there's some big things that you can grow into in that realm. And I
Everyone
challenged-
feels this resistance to something. It's not like
Sure.
a weird thing.
Sure,
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. But I guess if he was focusing on that,
He was
Right.
honest about it.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, he was
so-
super honest and
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable about it and shared very openly. And I just, innocently challenged him to, people are enamored by him. He's a frum guy who's like out
yeah.
there as it is.
Oh yeah.
And we just thought it would be cool to like really put him on the spot and like see.
We thought. I wasn't consulted.
I'm getting you some credit here.
Oh, it was good. It was good.
Well, you didn't challenge him to lean to the left or anything like
Oh,
that.
No, I just challenged him to work on that
Yeah.
area and that we would follow up with him to see how he's developed with his relationship with davening.
Cool.
I think your challenge might be easier. Maybe.
Yeah, it's not a hard one. Yeah.
We'll be right back to this episode of the Meaningful People podcast. But first, our friends from our friend at Infinity Land Services. I was working on having a good title for this episode. And I asked Mama, Mama, I need a good title. He said, maybe call ILS because ILS takes care of all of your title needs. Obviously, it's not the same title that I was looking for, but you might find yourself looking for the title that Infinity Land Services takes care of. And that's why you need to head to ilstitle.com. That is ilstitle.com, because when it comes to closing on a property, comes to closing on a house, you want to make sure you have the right people in your corner, and that is ILS. That's Infinity Land Services. So reach out to them today. That's ilstitle.com. Enjoy the rest of this episode. So I'm curious sort of how your story continues, how you got more, I guess, connected to the Chabad movement. You went to the summer program in the Catskills.
Yes. And we learned Tanya there.
You learned Tanya.
And
you're 21 years old. Chugging away.
The person who taught us was kind of on payroll. It was his family's camp. So he used to sleep in and he missed most of our classes. So we just learned it from the book ourselves.
Thank God for that.
Yeah.
No, imagine he taught it to you.
Huh?
Imagine he taught it to you.
No, he did turn up a few times. But this is why I remember, where is it? I will just have to learn it on myself.
Let's throw him into the challenge. Follow, he might need some follow up too. Make sure he's okay.
Might be still sleeping. You never know.
So that blew me away because it was the combination of intellectual sophistication, like the philosophical sophistication, and totally Jewish, like totally halacha, and fully Jewish, but it also has psychology. Tanya is really the first self-help book probably ever, at least in Judaism.
For some listeners who don't
Yeah.
know what Tanya is.
Okay, so Rabbi Shlomo Zalman of Liadi, who was the first Rebbe of Chabad, he wrote in 1796, he published in 1796 a collection of the different advice he gave to people when they came to see him. And he was a huge empath. He writes in a letter that every time someone comes to see me, I absorb their pain and I don't have any more room. My inbox is full. And if he wrote, if you keep coming, I'm going to run away.
Wow.
And he wrote, Ani moes b'chai, I hate my life. That's what he wrote, which is, it's unbelievable for Chasidic Rebbe to say that. That's like what you imagine like a spoiled 16-year-old girl saying,
Wow.
He wrote, I hate my life.
Because he was carrying the burden of everyone's pain.
Yeah, and he was very successful. Everyone wanted to see him. When you're a Rebbe, you've either got too many people or not enough people. There's not a lot of in between. So he had too many people. So he was like, I wrote it down in a book. Just get the book. Don't come.
Wow.
That's where it came from.
Really?
Yeah.
That's amazing. So
No, he said, if you've been once, don't come again. That's what he said. Because then just follow up with the book.
And Tanya
Wow.
is Rav Shner Zalman of Liadi's like instruction booklet for living life.
It's a self-help book, really. Or now it's called Your Best Life, Living Your Best Life. It was about
hashtag your best life.
It was about the Chasidic movement was very into joy. I'd be joyous all the time, and it's not that easy. So it was really a book to explain how to maintain positive inner world and how to worship God. Of course, that's like the main theme, but a lot about the heart, a lot about the mind, a lot about how they connect with each other. It was revolutionary. I don't know if you know this, but Carl Jung, famous 20th century psychologist who pretty much founded Western psychology, he said on his 80th birthday interview, everything I taught has been, anticipated by a rabbi. And his name was Dov Ber of Mezrich.
Wow.
It was a Maggid Mezrich. And if you open up the Tanya, he says, I base this on what I heard from a Rebbe, which is, Mezrich.
And for those that are not familiar, the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Chassidus, his main Talmud was this Lubavitcher Maggid, who had various Talmidim, including the Alter Rebbe, the Baal Tanya,
Yes.
and disseminated all of the Teres Baal Shem through the Lubavitcher Maggid.
Yes.
Wow.
So obviously, one of the important works that you've done is the Practical Tanya. But where I am sort of in your life right now is you're in your early 20s in the Catskills, and you're learning this Tanya for the first time.
Yeah.
So what impact did that make on your life at that moment?
It blew me away. I think that's really when I kind of a shift took place in me that I need to like. This is not just an interest. This is gonna like be consume me, or like this is really pulling me very strongly. And I used to like skip classes and write diagrams and like used to write it up in my own words. I always liked writing. I mean, English was never my top subject in school. I was like A grade science, A grade languages, B in English, which annoyed me.
Equals author.
Yeah, like B. I don't want to be a B. It wasn't really my thing. I never liked reading fiction. But I did like writing notes of what I had. So like desktop publishing had just come out. So I bought my Amstrad computer, which has a printer. And you could design, Macs had just come out. So like my first book was a biology textbook, kind of how to pass your exam. Because I wrote my own notes, but I wrote them as a book, like with diagrams. And then the next year I was in the sixth one, I was like, buy this book, and then don't waste time listening to what the teachers are telling you. They're telling you too much stuff. This is what you have to know.
It's very practical.
Yeah. And I put that on the ads around the school, and the head of biology called me and he's like, this is not the interest in biology we're trying to foster, just know the minimum to pass the exam.
Foster is a very, very British word.
Yeah.
Foster. No? Moscow?
Yeah, and English.
It's like a top 10 British word.
But that also gave me the kind of experience of disrupting a culture with a book and changing the way people think through a kind of new way of looking at a topic, which I ended up like, that's what I did.
Yeah.
What was your question?
Nachi was putting you back on the timeline of being in the Catskills, encountering Tanya for the first time.
It really blew me away. And I went back to college. They were like, stay in yeshiva. I was like, I want to be this wacko who goes away for the summer and then never comes back.
They tried getting you.
Yeah. So I was like, I'm going back like at least a year, and then I'll decide if I want to come back. So I went back, and that was a difficult year because I was like, didn't know where I was, didn't know what I was doing. And so one of the rabbis there, Chabad rabbi, invited me for Shabbos. And I was just like a regular college student. And he mentioned Tanya. So I was like, oh yeah, I know that. He's like, really? You know Tanya? Wow, what's going on here? So it's like, yeah, I did. So he's like, no, you didn't. So I did. Test me. So he asked me this question. I came out with the answer straight away. He's like, oh my God, this is unbelievable.
You remember what question he asked?
I do. It was about, it says when a Beinoni, the Tanya is all about like setting a reasonable expectation in Avodas Hashem. And he calls this the Beinoni, which is mentioned like twice in Shas. I think Tzadikim and Rishonim you know about, but the Beinoni is like an undeveloped idea. So he develops this idea in the Tanya, and he basically says, what if you're davening and you're really excited about God, but then when you leave and you go to work, you forget about God? Does that show your davening is insincere? And the Baal Tanya says, no. Why? Because you can come tomorrow and regenerate that excitement, and that shows that it's sincere. At least on some level, it's authentic.
That was your response to him.
Yeah.
And his jaw probably dropped.
So he's like, these are my daughters. Just take whichever one you want. Yeah. No, I mean, it wouldn't exactly happen like that. It didn't exactly happen like that, but it did. That's what happened. I ended up marrying his daughter.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh, that's hysterical.
Yeah.
Wow, you took him very seriously. Wow. And Mendel, you're a product of that.
Yep.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
It didn't happen in such a short space, but it kind of like really impressed him. And then someone I was like,
at that time, were you I guess fully observant? Were you putting on tefillin, keeping Shabbos?
Just like 6 months into it.
And it's so funny because it sounds like you, in a way, mastered Tanya before you came from.
Well, that's what got me. It really got me, yeah. Because I felt like whoever wrote this book understands me, because it's about struggle. Like religion always had been about perfection. And the image is always like, we don't speak any Lashon Hara, and we don't do this, we don't do that. And I was like, yeah, what about me? How do I fit into this? And it also shows there's different parts of you that are in a conversation. There's a thing called IFS. Have you ever heard of it? A type of therapy? Internal Family Systems, IFS. It's very hot amongst therapists now, and it's very similar to the Tanya. It's identifying parts that inside you have different parts that have their own needs and their own defense mechanisms. So this is very similar to the Tanya, where he talks about you have a godly soul, animal, different souls inside you, which are competing, and they're all protecting their own interests, and like have a healthy conversation with yourself. That's kind of the message.
There's a lot of discussion, and this is part of what we're learning in the North Woodmere Tanya, Practical Tanya Chabura, about transforming, not only subduing the Nefesh HaBahamis,
yes,
but actually Hisabcha, transforming it towards channeling and aligning with godliness.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is like the yeshiva upbringing that I come from that like brings this up, but I was always raised to understand that as a person grows in spirituality, the other side grows alongside with it. And I think it's a Gemara in Sukkah that says, Kol HaGadol Mechaver Yitzre Gadol Haimenu. And as a person achieves a certain spiritual loftiness, in order to maintain the Nekudas HaBechira, in order to maintain choice, the other side has to grow alongside it. Otherwise, there's no it's an inevitable outcome to choose good versus evil. And as I'm learning your Practical Tanya, this question keeps on coming up. And I shared with my chavrusa, Dr. Shuli Blobstein, that we're going to be meeting today, and like this question like came up. Cool.
Okay. Well, thanks for the heads up in advance. The Tanya is obviously classic rabbinic Judaism is Yetzer Hara, Yetzer Tov, right?
Yeah.
So we have good inclination, evil inclination. So the Tanya is kind of replaces this with different terms. Nefesh HaBahamis, animal soul, which is like the bad one, and then Nefesh Elokis, godly soul, which is the good one, which like 80-90% it's the same as Yetzer Tov, Yetzer Hara, but it's not exactly the same, because the Nefesh HaBahamis, the animal soul, is not bad. It's just an animal. It wants a good time. But if you can train it like you can have a good time in Kedusha, then it will come over to the side of Kedusha. So that is like how it's not fitting into the Gemara and Sukkot, you're saying. It's a slightly different model. That's his Habcha. You can transform the Nefesh HaBahamis.
I love that frame of it's an animal, and you can train an animal to be good.
Right.
There's a joke in Chabad about the difference between the Baal Shem Tov and our Rebbe, the late Lubavitcher Rebbe. This is the Baal Shem Tov. He taught you shouldn't make any money out of Yiddishkeit. You should have like a profession, which was basically agriculture in those days. So the saying is that the Baal Shem Tov took all the rabbis and he made them into farmers, and the Rebbe took a bunch of farmers and he made them into rabbis. Why? Because the Rebbe, I don't mean it in a derogatory sense, the Rebbe like said, get your Nefesh HaBahamis, get your animal soul, but use it for something good, to go and help a Yid, to make a Seder, to put on tefillin, to raise money for a good, it's okay to use the Nefesh HaBahamis. And it's actually, that's what we're here for. Because it says in Tanya that the neshama itself does not need a tikkun. The neshama comes down, it's perfect, and it leaves perfect. It's the body that needs a tikkun. And that's through transformation, elevation. So what you're picking up on is something very profound in the world of the Tanya.
Does that quench your...
So I'm still finding myself craving that reconciliation with the Gemara and Sukkah. I understand how the Tanya's terminology is different. I understand the concept of...
Well, it's actually in the Gemara. It says, Levavacha, it says in Brachas that Levavacha is the letter faces twice. Yeah, it's B'shnei Yitzrah. What's it mean to love Hashem with your Yetzer Hara? What's it mean? It's the same idea, really.
But the outcome that the Tanya invites us to embrace, the outcome of now I have transformed my Nefesh HaBahamis towards training that animal, as Nachi termed it, right?
He termed it.
Training that animal. If that's done successfully, is there still that Yitzrei Gadol Haimenu that's maintaining the battleground?
Translate.
Is there still that evil inclination that is presenting the other side?
It's a good question. I think I'll tell you what the answer is. I don't know. Maybe, But I think you could look at it like this, that a behemoth is on shaky ground. There's a story about the Rambam that they wanted to prove you could train cats to be waiters or something. You know the story?
Yeah.
And then, so the cats were like all sophisticated, and then the Rambam put down a mouse, and then all the cats ran off. So I think even when you've trained your behemoth to love God and to do Avos Hashem, it's on shaky ground. You know, it can see a tither and get derailed very quickly. So I don't necessarily know it has to be a bigger Yetzer Hara. I think it's more... you're still in a risk zone. You're always in a risk zone. And therefore, you always have to have that vigilance. Make sense?
Yeah.
You're nodding, yeah.
Yeah.
Good with it?
Yeah.
You okay?
Yeah.
He's happy. I can see
This
it.
whole podcast,
with the cat muscle.
the whole podcast is just to answer that question. We're out of here. See ya. But no, I really, first of all, I love that. I'm making merch like Animal Soul. Like now, like we're rebranding the Animal Soul. The Animal Soul isn't bad. Animal Soul could be good
If transformed.
Transformed.
Or even bigger, it says in Chassidus, brought from a Kabbalah, the animal souls from Eilam HaTayu, which is the primordial world of chaos, which preceded Eilam HaTikkun. This is from Lurianic Kabbalah, Kabbalah of the Rizal, which preceded the world of Tikkun, which is the kind of more normal world which we live in. So the chaotic, the power of the animal soul is really drawing on a higher Indian Ruchnius.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But bringing it more down to earth for a moment.
Yes.
For me, since I've started learning Tanya,
Yes.
like my Shabbos is completely different.
Really?
Completely
Wow.
different.
Tell me more.
Because now I sit with my family at a meal and I'll sit with my friends at a kiddush, and what we're doing can be halik. It's not like only during davening.
Right.
I'm
There's no
connecting to
shame.
the Eibishter. Correct.
Yes.
I'm sitting and I'm experiencing the Eibishter in the cholent that Moshe Klein makes, which I think he was like Yored L'Soif Das of Chazal of Oineg Shabbos.
Moshe Klein.
Eat cholent. He makes such an incredible cholent. Thank you, Hashem. But like that's halik.
Yes.
That is using your nefesh habahamis. That's your
Yes.
it's your physical indulgent reality
Yeah.
for godliness.
Exactly.
And it's so geschmack.
And it says even more. It says in Chassidus that the Nefesh Habahamis in the end teaches the Nefesh Elokis. Why? Because the Nefesh Habahamis got more enthusiasm. When it gets passionate, it gets more passionate. Then the Neshama is idle. You know, it's Ruchni. It doesn't, when you're getting excited about the Cholent, it's like, oh, it's like real. Like there's a joke about two Chassidim were sitting in the mikveh and they're thinking, what's going to be in Yom Mashiach? What's it going to be like? So the other guy says, the mikveh is going to be as hot as the cholent, and the cholent is going to be as big as the mikveh.
Very good.
Very
Very
deep.
good.
That's an Nefesh Habahamis dreaming about Mashiach.
Yeah. So I guess back to your. First of all, I love that. I started learning Tanya a number of times, and I don't know how far I've gotten, but I'm gonna.
You got to get, if you get past chapter 12, you're good. It's like the first 12.
How many chapters?
It's like Daf Yom. You get past Erevin, you're good. So it's like you
But
gotta-
also I find that it matters very much how you learn it. Are you learning it with a certain Rebbe, a certain Shir, a certain safer adaptation of it? To stam, like sit down in shul and open up a Tanya on your own, it's tough. You need a guide.
you're onto something, but I actually write with an Nefesh Habahamis.
You what?
I'm realizing now, I write with my Nefesh Habahamis.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And you're writing
It's
pretty
like,
holy things.
what am I, if I'm getting passionate about something and like bringing it, I'm writing it in a way that my Nefesh Habahamis can understand it. Yeah.
Because our Nefesh Habahamis is really the only way we know how to exist in this world.
Exactly.
It's our human condition.
What I really want to know, because something I did read, and something that people talk about is your biography of the Lubavitcher Rebbe is one of the more well known and thorough biographies of the Rebbe. And I'm curious, I think that in order to write a biography of someone, you really need to know them well. So what was that process like? Getting to know the Rebbe. Did you get to know the Rebbe? What was your relationship with the Rebbe like?
It was an insane process. I actually turned up in Crown Heights just after the Rebbe had a stroke, which he never recovered from, never spoke again.
Oh, wow.
So I never participated in like the dollars and the Fabrengens and all the stuff. Zilch.
Wow.
Now, nowadays, that's kind of normal. because it was like 30 years ago. But then I was like the only guy. Everyone else had.
Everyone else had met the Rebbe.
So I had this outsider complex, like, what's going on here? Like, who is this rabbi? Why is everyone so crazy about him? So I was always very curious. And so when he passed, I was straight away saying, like, we got to write a book. Like, we got to write a book about him. You know, everyone has a book. Marilyn Monroe has 100 biographies. Lahavdil.
Does she really?
Well, 200. It's like in the hundreds, okay? Like, we could have one about Lubavitcher Rebbe.
Wow.
And everyone in Chabad tell me, no, you can't do it. It's impossible. You can't capture him. Just forget about it. And I was like, okay, you got a point. I mean, and again, I didn't have like a personal exchange with him. So it just kind of was on the back burner. And then his 10th yahrzeit, Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz came out and said, the Rebbe's becoming a myth. And I was like, oh my God, we can't do that to him. Okay, like the Baal Shem Tov lived 200 years ago. It's, you know, there's some air of mystery around him, but like the Rebbe lived in Brooklyn a few years ago. We can't turn him into a myth. So that really irritated me. But I still had this problem, like how you're gonna, you know, can't capture him. So I was fixing my car, and another Lubavitcher had a junky car. So we were like talking, and I was telling this frustration. This was more recently. And he said to me, just write facts.
Sounds like he challenged you.
Kind of. I was like, you got
It
a
wasn't
point.
me, everyone.
Something clicked. It's like, you know what? I'll just write facts. Which, it's kind of impossible to completely do that, but that was what I was trying to do. And meanwhile, like the Rebbe had started working in 1950. He'd been in America since 41. But what he did in Europe, he was born in 1902. So there was like, no one really knew what was going on there. And as the years went by, fragments came out. So by the time it was like his 20th yahrzeit, you had enough that you could tie together a story. So I did that. It was my most controversial book.
Why controversial?
Because
Now you got Nach's attention.
One of the biographers of Rabbi Rakefet, he's in YU in Israel. I think he wrote a biography of Rabbi Soloveitchik. And he said, everyone liked it except for the family.
Right.
You can never keep the family happy.
Yeah.
So picking up on that, I was like, well, in Chabad, everyone thinks of the family of the Rebbe. So everyone had that kind of, I don't know, this is a bit yeah.
Is that so? People weren't happy with you?
Listen, some did. It was a very successful book, but there was a certain criticism of like you made the Rebbe too human.
Successful measured by
How do you gauge
sales?
that?
Yes, but also no, it's not just sales; it's impact. When I hear from people, wow, like I feel so connected. This is so fascinating. So you know,
Right.
it's also the eiches of the responses. But I felt this needed to be done because like. When the Rebbe was alive, you saw a man of flesh and blood, and you had to kind of believe, there was a belief that this is a tzaddik, this is a person who is not just a man of flesh and blood, right? But when you have this whole generation who's the other way around, they never saw him. So then you need the facts on the ground. So the spiritual part's there, yeah, for sure, he's a tzaddik, for sure I can go to his oil and get blessings, but who actually kind of, the physical part, the historical part, I think is more important for our generation. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I did it, really.
What would you say is something that our generation that did not live with the Rebbe as an active tzaddik of the generation, what would you like the generation to know about the Rebbe?
The Rebbe was about urgency, creating a sense of urgency for Yiddishkeit. Devote yourself to Yiddishkeit, but it's just like your pants are on fire. It's that kind of energy. It's like, you got to do it now. There's some story, I can't remember. Someone was in a private audience from South Africa, and they needed like the mayor or some high official to respond. So the guy says, when I get back to South Africa, call him. So the Rebbe says, no, call him now from my office. So he's like, but it's the middle of the night in South Africa. So the Rebbe's like, well, he'll think it's important if you call him.
It's so interesting because that's like a very important midah.
Yes.
I think it's one that I certainly struggle with. Is like, oh, that is important. Okay, I'm gonna do it soon. It's like, well,
yes,
do it now.
The Rebbe was born in Nisan, Chodesh Nisan. You just go. They went into the desert, like 2 million people, women, children. How are we gonna eat? What are we gonna do? Just go. Sort it out. That was very much like the energy that he had that was contagious. Yeah, I think that's.
I find it so ironic that out of all the many people who've had the opportunity to, sit with the Rebbe and fabring with the Rebbe, the person who wrote one of the most well-known biographies of the Rebbe had never really met the Rebbe.
Yeah.
What is that like? What do you think about that?
It tormented me for a long time. I never even used to tell people because it's like embarrassing.
Well, you put your name on the book. Oh,
I'm saying, yeah. I'm not talking about in the book, like before the book,
right?
And it was a bit embarrassing. Like, where's your dollar? Oh, it's around there somewhere. But
where's your dollar?
Is that a thing? Is that like a Chabad thing in Crown Heights?
No.
Like,
where's your dollar? Dude?
Police officer pulls someone over, license, registration, and dollar. Pull out a wrinkled single. Yeah, you're good to go.
It's amazing.
What were you saying? But yeah. So no, but what's actually happened is after Rebbe's passing, there's a huge disconnect between the adults that had exposure to him and their children. In general, there's a bit of a generation divide because of internet and how the world's changed. But in Chabad, it's huge because you have a whole generation of parents who are like, they're totally enamored with the Rebbe because they were there, they got the dollar, they buy the fabring, and they can't put it into words. It was just an experience. And they can't communicate that same level of excitement to their kids. And they don't realize when they say the Rebbe said to do this, it's just another rule for their kid.
Wow, so that's tough.
Yeah, so it's they have to keep halacha and they have to keep like the 5,000 things the Rebbe said as well. It just becomes like burdensome.
So very well stated problem. So what's the solution?
So
to that?
I actually I connect better with like the younger generation, with people not my age. Most of my friends are in the younger age group, and definitely people like who I like have a spiritual connection with. My main work's not in my local community, but I'm there a lot on Shabbos and everything. We're connecting with people. So it's enabled me to relate to this generation, ironically.
Well, how did you...
Not having that exposure.
Yeah, how did you... I'm curious, how did you really... this is maybe one of your most important life's work up until now, that publication, that book.
Yes.
And you had mentioned that those who didn't meet the Rebbe lacked that excitement.
Yes.
So how did you have that excitement and motivation?
My connection with that was very different because it was more about the ideas. I loved his talks, his sikhs, and the first book, Jewish book that I wrote was the Gutnick Chumash, which I took like 1,000 sikhs, which are the talks the Rebbe delivered, mainly on Rashi, and adapted them into like commentary. So that was my passion.
You're like
ideas.
A legend in Chabad. Like you,
I'll take that. Yeah.
Is that weird to say?
I think it's accurate.
Yeah.
You're a prolific author.
Thank you.
Of the Rebbe's and the Torahs of Chabad.
Like we grew up in my house.
Yeah.
That is the Chumash that my father picked up every single Shabbos day to say a vart from.
Wow.
And I'm sure I'm not the only one to say
that.
No,
you're not. I'm still a bit uncomfortable with it. You can see it's like,
but like it's so striking to me that
I had an aha moment when we had immigration problems, so we're in real trouble.
Oh, this podcast will help.
Oh no, we're okay. He's here. We're American citizens now, but
the British are coming.
We ended up hiring Michael Wilde, who's like, you know who he is?
In the city, yeah.
Yes. So his father was John Lennon's lawyer, and he's like Melania Trump's lawyer. Like it was like a fancy firm, and so he managed to save us.
Really?
Yeah.
I know son Josh.
So I'll tell you what happened. We got an appointment. It's like a few $100 just to say hi. And we went in there.
Hello.
And I don't like showing off, but I figured like, we really need help here. So I took a Chumash with and signed it for him. I thought maybe it'll help. And we turn up there and he looks at it. He says, "You have no case." So I was like, well, could you try? You're like the top lawyer in the world. So he's like, I've never lost a case. I'm not going to lose this one. So he's like, sorry. And we went downstairs. We're walking on Madison Avenue. I can still picture it. And I was like starting to cry because this was our last hope. I'm getting a bit of a shiver now even talking about it. And then my phone rings. He's like, come back.
Whoa.
I says, what happened? So he says, you left this book here for me? I didn't realize you wrote this book. I want to help you.
Wow.
Yeah. And then we had a meeting with his father, who, thank God, he's still alive, but like he got John Lennon a visa. This was a big deal during Vietnam, and the American government didn't want to give him. He's like a legendary lawyer. And then, so he looks at this Chumash, and he says to me, the Rebbe's very lucky to have a man like you. And I was like, what? It's like in yeshiva, it's always like, they always put you down, like it's like you're nothing, and you know it was all about being a nothing. And so when he said that, I mean, I don't normally say this the whole story in public; it's a bit uncomfortable. It started to make me feel like I'm hearing the story. It's I'm part of the story.
Wow.
It was a life-changing moment from that kind of.
Well,
Bittul and bitush and there's a joke about the guy comes to yeshiva and he sees everyone saying I'm a nothing. So he sits there saying I'm a nothing. So the next bacha turns to him, you've been here 5 minutes, you think you're already a nothing?
But that's so awesome that you never know where it's going to come from.
Yeah.
And this high-powered attorney empowered you to know the role that you have in the Rebbe's legacy.
Yes.
And in the Hishtalshelus of Torah's Chabad.
Yes.
He helped you see your own light. That's pretty cool.
He did. That's true. Yeah.
And I think he won your case.
Who are you talking about?
The attorney?
Oh. Yes, we are here. We're legal.
Nice.
Yes.
So
it worked out well.
You kept his streak going.
That's very cool. What would you say is and so it's interesting because we didn't really get to, take your personal story further. Obviously you became religious. You're here and you have a family.
Yes.
I think, you have a son here. And you're living in Crown Heights now.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do on like a day to day?
I write.
You write?
I spend all day writing, learning and writing. Yeah.
And you like sort of realize like that was your passion.
I actually am a little bit too isolated. I like what we're doing
thanks
now.
for coming out.
I could do this every day.
Do you like for coming out?
Do you like people or?
Yes, I love people. I literally love people, and so I don't know how to make money out of people. I love them.
It's so interesting because we sat with Shirley Besser, who's a prolific author, and he was sharing with us some of the lifestyle that he needs to live in order to maintain his output of writing.
He said he just doesn't answer the phone.
Yeah, I never answer the phone.
No.
If I get a call and it doesn't say who it is, like, dude, I don't even answer the phone to people I know. I'm definitely. What are you thinking?
Yeah. Is that your process though? Like when you're writing, let's say the Practical Tanya, or the Gutnick Edition, or the Book of the Rebbe, what was like the space that you got yourself in?
It's about getting into flow. Mm-hmm. And when I'm in flow, it just moves, and there's creativity, and it's going on the paper, and it's happening. And so I'm constantly trying to arrange my life to get into flow states. So like enough sleep, enough food, just being in the right mood, a certain equilibrium. And it doesn't always happen, and it's very frustrating when it's not happening. Like yesterday, I was just like kept getting distracted. I couldn't do it, and I just have to kind of self-soothe and say it's okay, you've already written 25 books and you'll be okay. But it is that's what it's like to be author, to constantly try and get into that creative mode.
I bet that applies also for a lot of other fields where it's and I think it's really cool that you spend time trying to create the right environment.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe many times people would say just do it, just jump in and start, and like that can be futile.
But by the way, for everyone who's listening who's not an author, it's so important nowadays to remove distractions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you have all your notifications on, you're never going to get anything done. You can't do meaningful work without, I say, if I can do 4 hours of flow, that's already good. Mm-hmm. Like uninterrupted, good work.
You could do 4 hours of flow, no interruption.
Yeah, on a good day, yeah.
What do they call it?
And then,
Bertzifus?
Yes. Look at you. For anyone that's only listening, the smile on Nachi's face right now for nailing that yeshivish term. Good for you.
Fakert, I'm not smiling.
Very good. Very good.
Very good.
I had two points that came up for me when you were sharing that. First of all, engineering your life around a certain output, around a certain outcome, around a certain goal. For you, it's flow. But I find that inspiring because we live in such a fast-paced environment, and I think the natural state, the default state is to let our environment dictate our circumstances. And we spend so much of the day reacting to what's going on around us.
Yeah.
And to mindfully engineer your day to achieve whatever goal you have, whether it's to get into flow, to get into Ritzifus, very deep, or to just be present with whatever you're trying to do.
Yeah.
It's so important.
It's so important, and it's becoming a lost art.
It really is.
The way we're kind of plugged into the internet. And
how do you give us some solution? Like,
you just got to, if anyone wants to speak to me, it's like, I'm not around till 4 o'clock. I did it with you. It's like, yeah, I was like, I don't do anything. I don't talk to a human before 4 o'clock.
Really?
When I've had a chance to do, okay, at that point, if I wasn't in flow or, okay, I give up. But
do you find that you get your best work done like early in the morning?
no, I'm not a morning person.
No.
But that's good awareness.
You're Lubavitcher.
Right? You know that, and you engineer your day accordingly.
Yes. Everything's about optimizing yourself, really. Like using the chushim and the growth that they've just given you and getting the maximum out of it. It's very important.
For sure.
Yeah.
The other piece.
Yeah, go ahead.
Even
What were you gonna
exercise, by the way. Exercise is super important to like just keep your mind.
I just started exercising recently.
Good for you, dude.
Thank you, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think beyond the physical, like, obviously we know the physical and what's the word? Advantage and benefits from working out. Mentally, I find that I work a lot better and smoother, and creativity is just oozing after a good workout.
Yeah.
And I think that's chemical. It's
Yeah.
like the
Of course.
endorphins
Yeah.
and serotonin.
But we're built for that. The body's built to be used. It wasn't
Yeah.
built to just sit around.
There's a lot of empirical evidence that demonstrates that.
Empirical ones or
Yeah.
Oh, I thought
And
it was regular.
the other thing that I was going to say is you mentioned like the notifications on the phone and the distractions. I've read empirical studies that demonstrate that the physical proximity to your phone is already a distraction. So forget the notification, forget the call, forget the ding, forget the vibration, all that. Just being within a certain distance of one's phone in anticipation of that ding, waiting for that call, waiting for that notification is already distracting.
Do you sleep near your phone?
So no, I shut my phone. I try
know, yeah.
I try to have some waking time with the phone off and away, and then I'll turn it on after doing certain things in the morning.
It's not fair though. Momo is one of the most disciplined people I know in the world. Like literally, like you don't.
It actually runs deeper because when we're using like the part of brain which is just doing short interrupted tasks, we're not using our real brain. You're just using like the they call it the reptilian brain.
Yeah, so I think my whole brain is reptilian.
Erroneous.
Nope, not erroneous. Fakert.
But if you like using WhatsApp, Twitter, all this kind of thing, it's training us to use reptilian brain. And that's why even as a culture, you see how the dialogue has changed in the last 10 years from being an intelligent dialogue to just a reactionary.
Is there like a cure for?
Huh?
Is there a cure for reptilian brain?
It's more prolonged, uninterrupted work. It's the interruptions that take you back into the more primitive part of you.
It's an avoidance.
I have a couple of questions for you.
That was a sigh. That was a deep
Yeah,
sigh.
like who? I'm a reptile. Yeah,
But you also don't have to take it. You don't have to bite it off.
I
all in
literally
one.
started Meaningful Minute. Like I am like the leader of the reptilian brain cult. I'm like, what's that guy?
It's changed.
The Davidians?
I did a video show on the Parsha about 10 years ago called Torah in 10. Like
that's
a Devar Torah in 10 minutes.
too long.
And you won't believe this. Everyone's telling me, how do you do it so quickly? Like 10 minutes, that's so short. Look where we are now.
Today you need a
Anything
meaningful
long-
minute
yeah.
on 1.5 or 1 or 2 times speed.
Literally.
And now we're just addicted. Yeah.
If you're listening to this podcast on more than one speed, leave a review. I want to know who you are. Question, because that's what I do here. What do you think the Rebbe would say if he was sitting here right now about the work that you've done with the Practical Tanya, with the biography you wrote? If you could close your eyes and just picture that. I think it's ever more meaningful because you've never had that opportunity to meet the Rebbe and really speak to him.
Yeah, the Rebbe didn't give any praises to anyone. Like even the people that really worked for him. I mean,
I love how you went with the historically accurate response.
yeah. So I wouldn't,
But maybe,
and so it was so like Rabbi Steinsaltz, the Rebbe once wrote something nice about him in a letter, and they put it on his gravestone because it was so rare.
Wow.
And
So
actually, your great grandfather Yochanan Gordon went into the Rebbe the first year. He used to raise money for a gemach. He went into the Rebbe the first year after the Frierdiker Rebbe passed away, and the Frierdiker Rebbe was just to praise him, and you're doing amazingly, and you're wonderful, and I love you. And that year they'd raised a lot of money, and he showed it to the Rebbe, and it was like, that's it. That's all you could do. Try harder.
what was because the Rebbe wasn't a hardball.
Yeah,
The Rebbe was soft and sweet and angelic. No,
he was tough. No,
He was tough?
Yeah. That's a myth that's been created by all these pictures of him smiling at children. Yeah, he was a tough person.
Really?
I actually wrote in one of my books, Tillim, that I wrote the phrase, the much loved Lubavitcher Rebbe. And people in Crown Heights came up and he says, we didn't love the Rebbe. We were scared of him.
Wow.
Yeah.
but they loved his ideas.
Yeah, but there was the Rebbe was he didn't give praise and he was always demanding. So I can't imagine anything else. He would just be like,
He's more
what's
revered.
next? What's
He's more
next?
revered.
What do you make
Yeah,
of that?
yeah,
What do you
what's
make of
next?
that?
Huh?
What do you make of that?
I think first of all it worked in his presence because he could get away with it. But when others do it or mimic it, it doesn't really work. Like
Right.
people is like, what are you doing next? Kind of, it's like, you're not the Rebbe.
Yeah.
I think that feelings matter, and I think people do need encouragement. So I think the Rebbe was really kind of a recovery generation. In the Holocaust, people were just trying to survive, and then there was no chayas, no energy, no interest, and there was like, get moving, guys. There's actually, you can have a life.
So that's what was needed for the generation.
Yeah, and I'm not saying he's irrelevant now, but that was definitely super needed then. But we did not really address things that have become more important to us, like dealing with trauma and self-awareness. It was not, I mean, he spoke about it, but it was not his emphasis. But now you feel these are things that are really burning by Yidden in general. Yeah.
I don't know this to be historically accurate, but just a theory. When someone has to express verbally their validation and their encouragement of what you're doing, there is value of that in that, but it's limited to the verbal expression. But if the Rebbe lived his entire life perpetuating a certain vision and sending people on shlichus, that was his whole mahus.
Yes.
People knew intuitively that when they are doing the Rebbe's shlichus, they are being Mekayim his shlichus. They're doing what the Rebbe is sending them to do.
Yeah.
And that almost innate validation, knowing that they're doing and carrying out the Rebbe's legacy, is more validating than anything the Rebbe could say to them.
If it was dependent on his validation, it wouldn't have lasted past his lifetime. Yeah, that's true.
And the last question I have is, what would you say is the most important lesson of Tanya that you can give over on this podcast today, right now, in this moment, for the people listening right now, wherever they are?
Back to Tanya.
Yeah.
We're back. Welcome back
to Tanya.
I always liked chapter 33. That's what I used to read before davening when I was in yeshiva. And it speaks about, the way we connect with the Eibishter is through Torah mitzvahs. But it speaks about there that if we're just aware of the presence of the Eibishter, even like in a table, and how the Dvar Havaya is in the table, so you can actually kind of bring him home, be aware of God in the everyday. That's already what the Tanya calls a dir tachtenim. Dir tachtenim is a medrash tanchuma, which means it's the purpose of creation to bring God, make him at home in the ordinary, in the cholent, in the table, that he's present in the table. So Tanya says there that even when you're not doing a mitzvah, if you just have that awareness of the Eibishter, that's already a dir tachtenim. So it's filling in the gaps between when you're going to shul and also you're not having a compartmentalized life that I do my Jewish thing and then I go off and do my other stuff.
It's all there.
It can be like a common thread that is so powerful.
You say from the Kutzker, I think, where is the Eibishter? Wherever
you let him in. Yeah.
They also say from the Kutzker that if I am I and you are you and I am I and you are you, then who am I and I'm you and you and are and am I, and that's the end of the podcast. Thank you everyone for joining. Rabbi Chaim Miller. Miller, thank you so much for taking the time, and wish you much hatzlacha with all the work that you continue to do.
Amen. Thank you.
Amen.
Hatzlacha to you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Let's
go. Dun, 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 dun. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Meaningful People podcast. Please feel free to subscribe to our channel, subscribe on Apple or Spotify or YouTube if you're watching this. We really appreciate you coming here and watching this episode. Chaim is such a breath of fresh air. He has so many works. We'll put some links in the description of this episode where you can buy some of his svarim, his books. He is awesome. And maybe you are awesome and we want to speak to you. So if you think that you have someone or you are someone that should be on this podcast, feel free to email us at meaningfulpeoplepodcast@gmail.com. We would love to speak to you. And of course, we have other podcasts. We have the Pause podcast, which focuses on mental health. And we have the 2 Cents podcast that is coming back, guys. Rabbi Ari and Yossi Ben Shushan, who will be speaking to you every single week. These are part of the Meaningful Minute family of shows. Links will be in the description to find these other shows. And if you find yourself driving, you're like, you know what, I need to say Tehillim right now, we have that for you too. You could just search Tehillim by Meaningful Minute in Apple and Spotify, and you will have a beautiful recording of Tehillim that you can listen to on your commute. I was just doing it today on the way here. So go ahead and check that out. I think you'll love it. And of course, thank you so much for listening to this episode, listening to this podcast. We appreciate all of your support. We'll see you again next week. Hope you enjoyed this video from Meaningful Minute. We have so much more content for you. You may like this. You may like this. Take your pick. Let us know what you think.